to catch up basically.
All right, I'm gonna help out here.
Thank you. Sweet.
All right, everybody should be in now.
All right, I'm gonna mute something. Oh, it's that, yeah. Awesome. And it says we are live and recording. And we'll keep letting people in as they get in. Welcome folks who are already here. We'll give it until actually 7 o'clock before we get started.
And we'll just ask everybody to mute yourselves if you're not speaking. And then, you know, when it comes time, if you want to speak, to please unmute yourself. And if you can, share your video.
Right. And we might have to press some button to help people share their video or something. So we'll all kind of work together on this, on that end. It's funny, I have the bell outside my window to keep time. So it's like 7 o'clock.
Yes, it is.
I'm just double checking that it is on YouTube. Okay, it looks good.
Yay.
Oh wait, and there's someone else to let in. We'll both keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I'll just keep letting them in when I see them.
Sweet, same, awesome. Okay, I'm gonna actually go full screen now. All right, so let's get this going. It's February 2nd, 2022, and welcome to Cannabis 101, a little informational Zoom with Stana Weisberg, who's a fellow trustee on our village board, and myself, and we are joined by Wei Hu and also Jen Metzger, who are both going to be our special experts today. I wanted to share a little bit about our guests while more people keep coming in, but I need to pull that up. You had such lovely bios and I don't know where they went. All right, well, Jen, wait, let me find it. Stana will tell a joke while I find some information.
You put me on the spot.
I'm just kidding. Doo-doo-doo. Yeah, so Jen, our former state senator. Oh, let's let Jason and Christina
I let them in.
Oh,
They're
thank
done.
you.
I got,
Awesome.
I'm on it. Just read.
You rock. You rock. Thank you. Yeah, we're all in this together. So Jen serves on the 5-member New York State Cannabis Control Board, which is responsible for developing the policy and regulatory framework for the state's cannabis programs and for licensing businesses in New York's cannabis industry. She is our former state senator, like I mentioned, representing the Hudson Valley and Catskills regions, and as chair of the Senate Agriculture Committee, sponsored legislation creating New York's cannabinoid hemp CBD program. A longtime public servant, used to serve on the Rosendale Village Board for a long, long time, and community advocate in the Hudson Valley. Jen served for over 10 years in local government over in Rosendale and co-founded and directed Citizens for Local Power, a nonprofit dedicated to fighting unfair utility practices and shifting to an equitable, locally based clean energy economy. She has a BA from Oberlin College and a PhD from Rutgers in political science. And in addition to serving on the Cannabis Control Board, she is senior policy advisor to New Yorkers for Clean Power. So thank you so much, Jen, for being here. And let me talk a little bit about Wei, who is also a local neighbor. Wei specializes in New York cannabis law and the New York State Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, the MRTA law. Wei has been representing and providing legal counsel to clients, businesses, and ancillary companies on areas of adult use cannabis licensing, compliance, corporate, and legislative issues. Prior to 2021, Wei honed his legal practice in New York State administrative, regulatory, public benefits, and litigation, while working for New York City as executive agency counsel at the Department of Social Services for over 14 years. His legal experience includes representing New York City in various state and federal courts, administrative hearings before the New York State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, and judicial appeals under New York CPLR Article 78 proceedings. Moreover, he has also worked on administrative rulemaking, public hearings, comments, promulgation of new New York State and New York City laws. Wei is also no stranger to public service, involved for over 15 years, from Legal Aid Society, Juvenile Rights Division, to New York City Administration for Children's Services, to New York State Attorney General's Office, Bureau of Investor Protection, and to New York City Department of Social Services and Human Resources Administration. He's a member of the Hudson Valley and New York City Cannabis Industry Associations, the Asian American Bar Association of New York, and he has presented and held legal clinics on the new law, criminal procedure law 440.46-A, to expunge prior marijuana convictions not subject to automatic vacator. Wei earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in economics and German from Wesleyan University, and his JD from CUNY Law, where he was an associate editor of New York City Law Review. And he's admitted to practice law in Connecticut, New York State, and Eastern and Southern districts of New York. And again, your hosts today are Trustee Stana Weisberg and myself, Alex Bojic. And now I'll turn it over to Jen.
Thanks, Alex. And thanks, Stana, so much for organizing this. I think this is really awesome. I would love to see other villages and towns do the same thing. So as Alex mentioned, and Wei, I'm very excited to be on a panel with you tonight. As Alex mentioned, I'm serving on the fairly newly created Cannabis Control Board, and I have to say it's a really exciting place to be. We have this like really unusual kind of once in a lifetime opportunity to create an industry that is built on the values of public health, equity, restorative justice, and environmental sustainability. And it's my hope that it can be a model for other industries, not just cannabis. I'm going to kind of cover a lot of subjects today, and Wei and I may even overlap a little bit, but that's fine. and we've got some questions I know to answer as well. So I'm going to share my screen, and just give me one sec while I work out any technical glitches with that. Let's see here. It worked. Right. Okay. So, though many of you on this call probably know what it is, I think this is just a great way to start. Like, what is cannabis? It goes by many names, but we use the formal and scientific name of cannabis for this extraordinary plant. One reason is the use of the term marijuana, which is a very common one in this country, actually has racist origins. In the early 20th century, anti-cannabis groups started calling it marijuana to associate it with Mexico and play on anti-immigrant and racist sentiment in efforts to get it outlawed. So we say cannabis, and it also just reminds us that it is a plant, Cannabis sativa, an incredibly versatile plant that has thousands of uses, medical, industrial, all kinds of uses, and it's been around for thousands of years. It contains hundreds of compounds, including cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, that when they interact have very different effects on the mind and body. And the most common that we all know is THC, known for its euphoric feeling, but CBD also offers many of similar benefits without the high. Hemp, which we've been hearing a lot about these days, cannabinoid hemp, it's all the same plant, which I think, many people may not know. The difference is really, it's just a definition. Cannabinoid hemp contains 0.3% or less THC content, and as a result, it's not a federally controlled substance, though it was at one time. It was decontrolled. So I want to just talk a little bit about the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. That was its name when it was passed. So I will be referring to it, or the MRTA, as it is called. When it was signed into law last March, New York became the 15th state to legalize adult use. I think we're now up to 18 states in the country, except for Pennsylvania. Every neighboring state, as well as Canada, have already legalized, but it remains illegal at the federal level. So it will be a closed market within our state until it is legalized nationally. So the law provides a consolidated framework to regulate the production and sale of cannabis. It established the Office of Cannabis Management under a 5-member Cannabis Control Board, which I sit on with 4 great colleagues. New York's program is different from other states in that we have folded under one umbrella all of our cannabis programs. So we're creating a new adult use cannabis program, but we're also responsible for the medical cannabis program and the cannabinoid hemp program. And we've actually been expanding those, and I'll talk a bit about that. But what is really incredible about New York's law, in my opinion, is that it really grounds cannabis policy in public health, equity, restorative justice, and sustainability. So we'll start with the equity and restorative justice side. The law requires, so a few different things. It's, first of all, these are really central to the law. It's really central to its passage. The law requires, and I think Wei will probably talk about this, automatic expungement of records of past cannabis-related convictions that, for crimes that are now legal. As of today, about 200,000 people have had their records expunged, and another 200,000 have had their records suppressed on the way to being expunged. So that's like around 400,000 people that no longer have to worry about possible barriers to employment, to getting a loan, or renting an apartment because of a prior conviction. So it is a big deal that really changes people's lives. The law requires that we create a social and economic equity plan. It's really about, it's also about providing new economic opportunities to those who have been disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs, as well as to groups who haven't had the opportunities that others have had, including minority and women-owned businesses, distressed farmers, and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. So we're very much about, under this law, creating a fair and equitable market conditions. And again, I would just really love to see us creating a model for other industries, what we want our economy and our society to look like. The law sets as a goal providing half of adult use licenses to social and economic equity applicants, to the folks that I listed on the previous slide. But having priority access to a license is really not enough if you don't have the capital, the business experience, and the other resources to be successful. And this has actually been a problem in other states that have, there have been other states that have tried, that have said, okay, we're prioritizing equity applicants, but They haven't provided that kind of support that's needed for them to succeed. So we're creating an incubator program to provide direct support, including counseling services, education, small business coaching, financial planning, and compliance assistance. We'll also be providing financial support to help equity applicants with the upfront capital costs. This is like one of the biggest hurdles. This will likely be primarily like both loans and grants. Another really important aspect of the law is to prevent the dominance of the market by big interstate cannabis companies and really create, a competitive market in which small businesses can thrive, small farms, small businesses can thrive, and including legacy businesses. The law sets limits on participation in the adult use market by vertically integrated companies operating in New York, and with the exception of micro businesses, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, with micro business licenses, and the medical cannabis companies that are already operating in the New York market, which I'll talk about soon as well. And for those who don't know, vertical integration is when a company owns every stage of the production process from seed to sale. So I want to talk a little bit about the license types that we're going to be offering when the adult use program rolls out. There are 9 different license types under the law. These are all fairly self-explanatory: cultivator, nursery, processor, distributor, retail dispensary, delivery, I think I said already, and on-site consumption. I want to just focus on the 2 licenses in particular for a minute, because I think that these are particularly valuable opportunities both for equity applicants and and for small farms and small businesses. One is the adult use cooperative license. Cooperative licenses, I think, potentially enable small producers with limited capital to pool their resources to cultivate, process, and distribute products to dispensaries. You can't, under the law, you can't sell directly to consumers, but otherwise, basically every other stage is open to you of the process. It's also a way, I think, to capitalize on the diversity of experience and skills among members in producing products and getting them to the market. They can be worker cooperatives, they can be producer cooperatives. They have to be democratically controlled. Their members must be comprised of New York residents, and they have to adhere to the 7 principles of the International Cooperative Alliance. But this is a business model that I really hope we can encourage. And as I said, you can't sell directly to consumers as a cooperative, but you can have partnerships with retail cooperatives, and there's huge opportunities there. The other license type that I just wanted to draw attention to is the micro business license. It basically allows, as I mentioned, it's the only vertically integrated license allowed from seed to sale. I guess it doesn't have to be you don't have to be vertically integrated, but it is an option. And I kind of imagine something similar to a craft brewer, a craft farm business, brewery business, or something like that. So the definition, and I know there were questions about these licenses. The definition and criteria for them has to be developed. We haven't developed we're not finished developing the regulatory framework for that yet. So there's not a lot of detail I can give you about it at this point. But I do want to make you aware of the opportunity. We'll be developing the size, scope, and eligibility criteria for this license. And when we put out the regulations for public comment, I encourage you to please review them and provide public comment. So I want to kind of shift gears and talk about an element of our law that doesn't get that much of attention, but is super important. And the MRTA is really about climate-centered, resilient, sustainable cannabis industry practices. The law, right up front in the intent of the law, it says that the MRTA is to protect the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act is to protect the environment and improve the state's resilience to climate change. It requires the Cannabis Control Board to develop environmental and energy standards and restrictions on the use of pesticides and best practices for water and energy conservation. And it also requires us, when granting licenses, to consider climate resiliency and adverse environmental impacts in license applications. So, and as you can see, there's a whole range of areas: water usage, energy usage, carbon emissions, waste pollutants, harmful chemicals, and single-use plastics. So it's pretty comprehensive. And, it is because, it's because we passed one of the strongest climate laws in the country. Number one, very important. But also, there are definitely, we've seen some trends in other states, and there are some areas of concern in cannabis production, as we've seen it in the industry. One big one is energy consumption. Much of the cultivation in other states has been indoors, which is extremely energy intensive, and especially in the Northeast, where temperatures and humidity drive higher heating, cooling, and dehumidification needs. But the lighting is also huge. Lighting intensity can be 50 to 200 times more than in office settings. They're running all the time. You can get, when you grow indoors, you're basically you're recreating nature inside of a building, and you can also accelerate the grow process. Supplemental carbon dioxide is used to accelerate plant growth, which increases the carbon footprint as well. You can get many more harvests in a year when you grow indoors, but the energy use is significant. In terms of like organic waste, plant waste, other states, there are concerns around security, like not diverting plant waste from the industry into the illegal market, has inadvertently encouraged practices that end up encouraging landfilling of organic waste, which of course just generates methane, which is a hugely potent greenhouse gas. So we want to make sure that we're designing our regulations in a way that support organic composting or more sustainable practices, and certainly don't discourage it. And then packaging. There's widespread use in the industry of single-use plastics. There's widespread use of single-use plastics throughout our economy, but there was just a recent report on the greenhouse gas emissions from the U.S. plastic industry. It's on track to surpass emissions from coal by 2030. So it's a real serious thing, and we want to make sure that we are, supporting sustainable alternatives to the extent we can. And I always like to, not very good at driving this thing. I always like to make a plug for outdoor, sustainable, and regenerative cannabis cultivation, which has a very valuable role to play. It's not going to all be outside. It's going to be a mix. It's going to be an indoor cultivation, greenhouse cultivation, outdoor grow. But the greenhouse gas emissions, of course, from outdoor grow are far less, 92% less than indoor grow. And actually, practicing regenerative cultivation practices, we can actually improve soil health and remove climate damaging emissions from the atmosphere and sequester it in the soils, you can actually play a positive role on the climate front. So it'll be important to address any barriers to outdoor cultivation for those who want to do it, especially for equity applicants, and make sure that that's in the mix in New York's cultivation. I just wanted to quickly point out that taxes and revenues, I'll focus mainly on the revenues. On the state side, I just want to point out that, you know, it is required by law that all the revenues we collect from taxes on cannabis are deposited in the state cannabis revenue fund, and the law is very specific about how this money is to be spent. 40% of it goes to public schools, 40% of it goes to community grants reinvestment fund, to basically to reinvest in those communities most harmed by prohibition, and 20% goes to drug treatment and public education. So basically, it's all going back into our communities. And there's also locally a 4% tax for those communities that that did not opt out, and that includes the village of and town of New Paltz, and actually the vast majority of Ulster County. But of that 4%, 25% goes to the counties, 75% is distributed to municipalities according in proportion to their share of sales. For a village, it's either, if you don't have an agreement with the town of how to share that revenue, it's going to be split. So just want to point that out. All right, I just want to talk a few minutes about our other programs beyond adult use, which is definitely an exciting one, but medical cannabis is also a really important program as well. That's been around for a little while, since 2014 with the passing of the Compassionate Care Act. The MRTA actually, what's the word? Well, it essentially replaced the Compassionate Care Act, rescinded, that was the word I was looking for, and replaced the Compassionate Care Act and renamed it the Medical Cannabis Program under, as I mentioned, under our purview. So as it was originally set up in 2014, there are 10 vertically integrated companies that are providing cannabis, medical cannabis right now. The number's up to about 125,000 certified patients in New York. We will be expanding that number and also encouraging, making sure that dispensaries are being opened in underserved communities. That's a really important, goal of our work. We have actually already implemented a bunch of changes to the medical cannabis program. We've expanded eligible conditions to include, any condition certified by a practitioner. Basically, they're the ones that that should be exercising their professional judgment to decide what it should be prescribed for. We also expanded the types of eligible practitioners who can prescribe it. We allowed the sale of whole flower for medical cannabis products, permanently waived a fee for patients, a registration fee. And we have started the process of getting home cultivation in place. We issued draft regulations early on. We've gotten public feedback on those. We got a lot of public comments. That comment period is now closed. Those comments are being reviewed. We may make changes based on those public comments, then they have to go out for public comment again if you make any changes to it, and then we can put them in place. So that's the process, but it will be this year. Okay, just quickly, cannabinoid hemp program regulates CBD and related products with clear standards for manufacturing, packaging, labeling, and testing. I don't want to take too much time because we want to get to Way, but I just want to mention two changes. These are changes that I advocated really strongly for, and they're proposed right now. Among other changes, we've proposed a new low-cost cannabinoid hemp farm processor license, and also we proposed prohibiting the use of the term craft and labeling and marketing unless certain criteria are met. Both of these are really geared towards supporting small farms and small farm businesses, and with craft, like a true craft artisanal product. So that's open for public comment. You can submit comments on the website. You can just, the email address is right there. It's actually behind the picture of all of you, so I can't read it. Okay, so where we are now in terms of legal sales, we have been engaged in a public engagement process. I do want to mention we're doing these series of cannabis conversations around the state that's being led by Tremaine Wright, the chair of the Cannabis Control Board, and there's a Hudson Valley community conversation on February 16th. You can get information about that by going to our website, cannabis.ny.gov, and you can register in advance. We're working on building partnerships to develop the social and economic equity plan, which is going to be guiding our work. And we're drafting the regulations so that we can get them in place so that we can start the licensing process. But it is a process, and it's in a process that involves extensive public input, and that's really important. So we don't want to cut that short in any way we can't legally, but we wouldn't want to. And that's it. I want to thank you all and turn it over to Way.
Thanks, Jen. All right, Way, I'm going to pin you now while you share your screen.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jen, for your really comprehensive overview and really taking your time out of your evening. Talk about all the great changes. And thank you so much, Alex and Stan, for having me. And for all you New Paltz locals, I mean, you should really thank Alex and Stana for really bringing information to you. It's the being proactive and, it's being handled at the state level. But, they actually want to bring in local issues and give you information about sort of things that would affect you. So thank you so much for hosting this event. Let me just show my screen very quickly. Jen did a fantastic job really capturing sort of the whole, picture, sort of all these changes. And I just sort of want to focus in on delve into a couple of things, we'll provide a little more detail. I am an attorney, hopefully a good one, rather than a bad one. But, I came in, like what Alex said, I did work for the city of New York for over 14 years. And I became very interested in cannabis law just because I think, what did they say? It's necessity is the mother of all invention. I just felt that, just trying to provide the information out on the new law. And really, it's very comprehensive. If everyone has read it, it's a tremendous amount of work. It's a 128-page single-spaced piece of legislation. So it touches upon sort of labor law, it touches upon new penal law, criminal procedure law, legal and traffic. So it's just beyond, it's anyone who thinks it's just beyond sort of, hey, weed is legal, it not only addresses, bringing it to the legal domain and regulating it, but it also addresses sort of the harm, done to, Black and brown communities after the war on drugs. The way I always view it is that, like, hey, a large part of the MRTA is also for restorative justice. It's kind of hypocritical that people now still have convictions on their record, like felony convictions on their record, even though now you just, in 2022, 2023, you get a license to do exactly what was verboten in the past and things that sit in the jail. So really the MRTA as a whole body of law is tremendously important, not only for legalization, but also for what Jen talked about, making sure that, marijuana is regulated, it's kept safe, the growing and processing of it is done in environmentally safe and sustainable ways, and that people who have been disproportionately harmed are able to sort of participate and benefit from this new program. So I asked Alex, I'm like, hey, what do you want to talk about? You know, I know Jen's going to cover sort of the major highlights of all this. And she thought that maybe there were three things that could really just talk about to you tonight. So, so there's three very, very, very different topics. So pardon me for the awkward transitions, but the first one was sort of personal cultivation of cannabis. You know, everyone's talking about, hey, where can I buy it? When can I buy it? But really, at the end of the day, just what Jen said, it's a plant. It's been around for 10,000 years. You know, just by, you know, I know our legislature fought hard just so that, you know, just normal average people could have cannabis accessible to them and produce themselves and not have to go to a store and purchase it. So, I mean, one of the first things that the OCM and CCB did was propose on October 21st of last year a whole set of rules for personal cultivation. So I know there's been a lot of talk like, hey, I know the regulations for the cultivation of cannabis for medical purposes are out there. You know, where is it for personal consumption, for recreational use? And it's actually in the same document. They proposed on March 21st. You know, so if you're ever going to look, when everyone, you know, is waiting with bated breath for the new adult use license regulations come out, you know, when you look for it, it'll look something like this: rulemaking activities. There'll be a proposed rulemaking. For this, I guess there's no hearing scheduled for the personal cultivation of cannabis. But when they, you know, right now, I think Jen said they are they have fielded public comments. They're going to review them and take them into consideration. And the next step is whether they adopt, you know, that's if they want these rules as is to be in effect. What the state will do is, publish a notice of adoption of the rulemaking. So hopefully in short time, this will be, you know, if, you know, on the books under Title 19 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, Part 115, subsection 2, you know, to really, you know, show sort of what are the restraints out there. You know, thankfully, you know, the Office of Cannabis Management has taken a very reasonable approach towards this. You know, let's just keep it out of the hands of, you know, young kids. Let's keep it safe. And, you know, the three additional requirements is that, you know, that's, you know, on the left hand of your screen is that you have to cultivate in a closed area. You can't be plainly visible from public view. And you have to try to mitigate the odor. You know, if you grow and you cultivate your own plants, and it's obviously, you know, anyone who has been in contact with cannabis, you know, it's very pungent. You may be, you know, if it grows too close and it bothers your neighbors, it's a nuisance action. You know, you have to be respectful of the people around you and your surroundings, and obviously make sure that, you know, it never, ever gets, you know, into the hands of minors. So you got to install and maintain reasonable security devices, and lock and store your cannabis in a manner that prevents theft, loss, or access by an unauthorized person. So, you know, it's really the Office of Cannabis Management is really moving forward and really, you know, trying to sort of democratize this, you know, that we don't have to go into a store. You know, I know there's gifting of clones of seeds. And so this is definitely a viable option for those who are, you know, have, you know, different means to obtain legal cannabis. So I'll be happy to address questions on this, you know, later. Something else I really I'm very passionate about is the really strong provisions to vacate prior marijuana convictions. You know, it's like I said earlier, it's going to be legal. It's going to be for sale to provide billions of dollars of economic opportunity, you know, for a lot of people within the state. And, you know, the part of the question, part of, you know, why the legislature fought so hard is that the question is, if people are suffering severe or ongoing consequences to this day that disenfranchise them, from citizenship, that disables them from certain types of employment, that bars them from public housing, that really sort of alienates them from sort of the community at large. It's sort of hypocritical. It's like, hey, we could sell cannabis legally now, but this person is still has a criminal conviction for doing something for which there's no more stigma. There's no more, oh, this guy sold cannabis. Oh, bad person. So, I mean, part of it is, it's really illegal, you righting the wrongs and making sure people who have even finished their conviction sentences, their paroles, that they can actually, move forward in their lives and not suffer from criminal conviction. So just two things I just want to say very generally. Every one of you on this, presentation right now can become experts at helping people vacate the prior cannabis conviction. And I know there's a lot being said that, oh, it's automatic. Oh, don't worry about it. It's automatic. I want to say, be very, very crystal clear. It's automatic, yes. But for sort of lower level crimes, if you have under 3 ounces, if you're convicted of a marijuana related conviction previously, it was under 3 ounces generally, it will be automatic. The Office of Court Administration will take care of it. They will expunge it. But obviously, not everyone out there, only had low-level offenses. They have convictions. Some of them has resulted in felonies, and it's not that much. So what I want to say is that the MRTA will automatically vacate the marijuana convictions when they are no longer crimes now. But it is not automatic if what you did previously in your prior conviction, if it happened now, it would still be unlawful. There's no automatic process. You could sort of sit back in your house and wait for it to be automatically expunged any day. But if it's still illegal under this chart, say you had over 10 pounds outside of your house, that's a Class D felony, and they catch you with it. It was previously a Class C felony, I believe. And I don't know. The law is written this way that it's not automatic, and some work is going to be done. So things that were crimes and still would be criminal now under today's laws, a little bit of elbow grease is needed to make that happen. You need to fill a form. So what Criminal Procedure Law 440.46A 2 says is that, hey, if it's not automatic and what you did before was illegal and it's still illegal now, but it's a lesser sentence, it's a lesser crime now, and all of them are, you can move to vacate. And especially if you establish severe or ongoing consequences, including but not limited to potential actual immigration consequences, things that you need to plead, on court papers to get your prior marijuana conviction vacated. So God bless the OCM, doing great work. Christopher Alexander is really staying on top of it, working with the Office Court Administration to vacate many, many, many hundreds of thousands of prior marijuana convictions. But please, keep in mind, if you have something more serious, it was over 3 ounces. If it was a felony, it's not automatic, and you need to do paperwork. So, like I promised all of you tonight, on this video conference, that you would all be experts on how to do this. How am I so sure? How do I have the confidence to say this? So unfortunately, the great legislature, I love the legislature. One of the few things I always get annoyed about is that, oh, the law wasn't strong enough. But no, this is an amazing piece of legislation. It actually required the chief administrator of the New York State court system to promulgate all the rules and make the forms necessary to enable filing of petitions. So, so what does that mean? Hold on a second. Oh, let's see. They created a boilerplate form for you. It's not only do they have some of the automatic ones, for check boxes. So it's kind of weird. You can fill it out, even fill out this form, even though it would be automatically vacated. But you could also use this form to fill it out when it would not be automatically vacated to expunge all records of a prior marijuana conviction. So, please, I think spread the word out there for anyone who does have either a prior marijuana conviction that would not be automatically expunged. It's very important to know that there's a court form that can be filled out with instructions for people to how to do this. I'm currently in an appeal for the second department all the way in Brooklyn. I tried to vacate a prior marijuana conviction after this person completed his 2-year sentence, 2 years in jail, completed 2 years of parole thereafter, and still the court found a statutory defect to not vacate it, but to impose a new Article 222, a new cannabis conviction, which we are now under appeal. Just want to be, ideally, the state legislature would have clarified and not had an error in the drafting of the law, but unfortunately, there was one Supreme Court justice that took advantage of it and constructed it to interpret that they can impose a new conviction even after vacating the prior one. So that's all I want to say about that. This is a state form. If you have any questions, please reach out to me on how to fill out this form. But I would really, really, it's very important to plead severe or ongoing consequences, in order to get this done. So please, reach out to an attorney, reach out to a legal aid society to get this done, because it is very important for many of those people with convictions. They disable you from many types of employment. They bar you from public housing. It's like you don't really have your full life, your full source self-determination. So it's very important out there, especially with the legal market coming out very shortly. And the last thing I want to say is that, coming to Jen, I don't want to leave a lot of room for Q&A, is that, Jen said hit it on the nail. Like, there's 9 types of licenses. If take a screenshot out of this, please. I think people ask, how do I start? How do I, get into this industry? I would say understand this chart inside and backwards and forwards. It's if any of you have seen the LSAT, it's kind of like questions, LSAT question. Y can sell to Z, Z can sell to, can distribute to, A cannot distribute to B. So it's kind of, it's very, very restrictive, purposefully, because it allows, the business to be spread throughout the industry. There's a top vertical and there's a bottom vertical. Definitely, be very aware of what your license allows you to do and what it does not allow you to do. The license restrictions are amazing for just because vertical, if the Columbia Care or the MedMen dominate the state, I think the opportunities for the smaller players may not be as robust. So really, it's we've got to really thank the Cannabis Control Board, Jen, for a thoughtful, and the Office of Cannabis Management for thoughtfulness on really how to make sure there are as many winners in this industry as possible. So definitely, I think she explains sort of the descriptions, but definitely understand who you can buy from and who you can transfer to, because those are the critical elements when you approach your thought process into entering the industry. I'm over time, so I'll leave it at that. Any questions, please let me know.
Wow, this has been so helpful and amazing and all of that. Let me unpin you, and I'm going to let Stana lead with we're going to do our best to ask the questions that were submitted that might not have been addressed. If you guys feel like you totally answered the question in your presentation, of course, say so, and realize we're getting up on time. I'm happy to hang out as long as anyone wants to hang out. Let me undo the pin. Oh no, I want to pin all of you. Well, Stana, you can take it away.
We could have Wei not share his screen, maybe.
Oh yeah. And I have those materials from Way when, we met over the phone recently, and can make sure to share those around with everyone as well. They're really helpful to look at. So you don't have to rely on a screenshot. I'll make sure you have that chart.
Okay, well, the first question that we have, I know that Jen touched on this some in her presentation, but we really wanted to know how specifically the CCB, et cetera, are ensuring that justice matters are actually addressed, namely the issues of racism and the war on drugs. We know that the most conservative number is that 94% of the folks who were affected by prohibition were BIPOC folks. And that's the most conservative number, is 94%. White people mostly were not being convicted of marijuana crimes. So you did touch on this some in your presentation, but I noted, for instance, that from at least what I can tell so far, I don't see that people who are directly affected by prohibition are in any positions of power within the structure that's been put together. And so I want to know, I don't know if you can speak specifically to that, but just, you did talk, like I said, some about it in your initial presentation, but if there's anything more that you can add about the restorative justice part of doing this, the better. I was really happy to hear about like the incubators and stuff. That whole program was really exciting to hear about.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that it's going to be really important. I don't think I talked about it that much, but to support, as I said, there's like a lot of overlap between equity and legacy businesses, but really helping those legacy businesses come into the legal market and trust that it's the place to be. And that's something that we're very attuned to. And I also I guess I would say that, I mean, we've both touched on like the criminal justice side of it. It's hugely important, but there has to be, this has to be a sustained effort to really, create, generational wealth.
Yes.
Like, not like a one-time, here you go, here's your loan, out the door kind
Yeah,
of thing,
yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want to like, be completely starry-eyed about it. Like, it's going to be challenging, it's going to be challenging, and it's going to require a real commitment. There's like all kinds of challenges of trust, challenges of resources, but also point out that it's not just about giving economic opportunities in the market. It really is about also how the revenue is spent and how it's reinvested in communities that have been disproportionately impacted. And there's a lot of there's a lot of opportunity there, and the law is very general about that. Like kind of open it. There are a lot of things you could address with those funds in those communities. So, and I should mention that how the money, how that, like, it's actually not the control board that decides how those funds are spent under the law. The law calls for the creation of a separate board, which hasn't been appointed yet, but needs to be appointed by the legislature and the governor very soon. And I'm trying to remember its formal name, and I can't remember. It's an advisory board, but it's responsible, together working with the chief equity officer, Jason Starr, who, by the way, comes from a background in human rights, in social justice, and is just like a great person. But just
very glad to hear it.
And just the the boards, the people leading these positions, it's a very diverse group as well. I just want to point that out as well.
That's good to hear. I mean, I'm grateful to know that you're there, because I know that you're very thoughtful about this, and I hope that you'll push to make sure that that folks who were directly impacted, that their voices are heard, and that they're given some positions of power within this to help, help make sure that justice is restored.
Thank you. So the next question was a two-parter about what is a micro business licensing provision, which I think you covered in a couple different slides really well, Jen. So folks who submitted that question, if you need any follow-up, you know how to get in touch with us. Another part of it, though, was how would a business looking to purchase tested, ready to process cannabis go about finding an approved supplier? Would they be responsible for the testing and labels?
Right.
Real quick, because that was my question. Hi.
Hi.
So the first part really is kind of hinging on which license. Are we looking more at a micro business, or are we looking more at a cooperative, or how do we sign up for one of these incubator counseling sessions?
Right. Well, and the incubator is for equity applicants, so you'd have to qualify as an equity applicant.
We are a woman-owned business.
So yeah, so all of those little details of like how that's going to happen, like we still have to promulgate the regulations that like lay that out. But the testing would fall on the manufacturer, processor, who like it's yeah, it wouldn't.
Okay.
If you're bringing the ingredients in to bake products, you're not responsible for testing them. I mean, I'm going by what we do with the cannabinoid hemp program. And it's, again, it's kind of like TBD, but for instance, like in the cannabinoid hemp program, you can, all of the licensed processors are, you can see them on the website, so you should be able to access information about who is licensed. And then there's some really great industry associations. There's a whole bunch of them. the Growers and Processors Association. There are various industry groups and cannabis groups. I think there are going to be a lot of resources for businesses, both on the government side.
Where can folks find those resources?
What?
Where can folks find that information? Where can they find those resources?
Well, we will definitely be making those resources available. I mean, we're with the education and kind of like informational part of our work is a really important part of that work. But I also know that the industry association is actually planning on doing a lot of its own trainings and educational programs as well. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities to get information and learn, conferences and
awesome.
All kinds of stuff. But yeah, from our side of things, we'll be putting out resources on that kind of thing.
Yeah, I refresh on the website every day just to see.
It'll be until the regulations are out. It's going to be a little while until. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
But good luck.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. I see the Cannabis Place has your hand up. Did you have a question that was related to that question, or was it an additional separate one?
That's an additional separate one.
All right. So it looks like a couple of the next questions were already answered. Do you want to just throw your question at us live, Cannabis Place folks? Sorry.
Yes, sure.
Thank you. Hi.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My name's Osbert Orduña. We're actually a New York State certified service disabled veteran-owned business for cannabis, and we're pending our MBE as well. My question is with regard to on-site consumption lounges versus retail dispensaries. An on-site consumption lounge, it's our understanding, will have the opportunity to sell cannabis products, much like a bar can sell products to consumers. Will an on-site consumption lounge have the opportunity to also do delivery? We're just kind of weighing out the options of the dispensary license versus the opportunity for the consumption lounge license. Because if you look at New Jersey, for example, their consumption lounges have to be connected or affiliated with a dispensary, and it's different in New York. So we're just trying to figure out that route.
Right. Way on your handy dandy chart, do you have it off the top of my head? I cannot. There.
No, I don't think I know.
Restricted.
Yeah.
But I would have to check.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I think the regulations will really provide that information. I know retail dispensaries can deliver from their own store. I know there's a separate delivery license, but there's no additional information on on-site consumption lounges, whether or not they can deliver as well. So
yeah. There's a lot of detail like that has the law, as I like say a lot, like the law is like the bones and we have to put the meat on it. So that's to come. But thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Bill Murray, trustee Bill Murray has his hand up. Did you want to throw a question at us live, please?
Sure. Hi.
Hi.
Hello, Bill.
Hi, how are you guys? Just a very quick question, maybe two questions. I noticed that in the city there are two cannabis clubs that have established themselves in Chelsea and in the East Village, and I'm wondering what the state thinks about that. Are they licensed? How is that happening, and why is that happening? And secondly, how's zoning and planning in terms of agricultural grows? Are counties being asked for new regulations in that regard, or municipalities?
So on the first question, none of that is legal because there is no licensing yet. So, I mean, we have all heard of various businesses popping up as they will, but it's not legal. And we're really working to get this program rolled out so that everyone can be legal and be using products that are tested and they're quality verified and that are safe. So, and on the second question, localities maintain their traditional zoning authority. I think you were asking about outdoors. Were you asking? I mean, it's an agricultural activity like farming, like any other farming activity. So it would follow your zoning in that regard. And yeah, it depends it will depend what your particular municipality zoning is for agriculture.
Yeah, I know, not to interrupt, I know Miss Chairperson Wright, Tremaine Wright, did talk about sort of not having sort of caps on licenses, but at the same time, she said that localities can put sort of restrictions on how many on a given street, just so that not everywhere, not every storefront is a retail dispensary. So there are sort of local, options they could take. So
well, that's also under the law something that we can consider. Essentially, I mean, localities are notified when a business wants to open up in their jurisdiction before the licensee is required to notify you before that application is submitted. But that is one of a list of things that we can consider when granting licenses is how many have already been granted in that community, and also whatever we're not required to follow it, but localities can provide input into the control board on a particular application as well for us to consider.
Thanks, Jen.
Sure.
Okay, so next we're going to go back to one of the questions that had been submitted prior. And someone is asking how they can get a legal medical cannabis card. There are so many shady quote unquote doctors that will charge you hundreds to give you one. But what if you legitimately qualify? Where are the cannabis friendly doctors in New York?
Okay. Well, so yeah, first of all, I'm sorry if you've had like a bad experience with a provider, but so the process is like with any medication, a doctor or not a doctor necessarily, it's actually any practitioner who can, we've changed the law. So any practitioner who can prescribe medicine can prescribe to cannabis. But the practitioner, has to like prescribe it to you. So you need someone, they have to certify you as a cannabis patient. And then you register yourself online. We actually just launched this whole system, this like streamlined registry and certification system, and I've been getting good feedback on it. It's pretty straightforward. It's free, but you have to be certified first before you can register. And then you'll get a temporary. You can like print out a temporary card after you register. And you'll get like a permanent card in the mail once it's been approved. And but in terms of providers, like it's kind of like with any doctor, right? You're like you have to like go by people's recommendations, word of I mean, just it's like any other. I will say, however, though, the whole list. I just saw this actually. I didn't realize we had it, but the list of certified practitioners currently is right on the website. So on cannabis at the cannabis.ny.gov, if you look under the medical program, you can see all of the practitioners who are prescribing cannabis right now. So at least you can see who's out there and what the choices are.
Thank you. I know we're going a little over. We'll wrap up soon. I see that Jason has a question. Do you want to throw it our way?
Yeah, sure. This is actually a follow-up on the zoning question, and I'm wondering if the Cannabis Control Board or anyone else has considered that zoning regulations or maybe guidelines for municipalities doing zoning about hemp and medicinal cultivation, because with pollen drift, medicinal crops could be completely ruined by hemp crops that are placed in a way that pollen drift could actually reach them. So I'm wondering if there's any thought that's been given to those kinds of things as that relates to zoning.
Yeah, I remember back in the day when I was working on the hemp legislation that this came up a bit, these concerns about cross-pollination. It's so much about local zoning, like that's local. To my knowledge, it has not come up in our newly formed organization, but it is a tough one because it's home rule. I mean, zoning is really the authority of the locality. But I don't know, Wei, if you have any, as a lawyer, have any additional insights to add to that one. But I know it is, it's kind of a hard one, a tough one to address.
No, these are great questions. Really, it's questions like, can you operate a cultivation on a residential property? I mean, these are some of the things that are going to be put out there. If you own 400 acres and you have no neighbors with a residential property, these are the questions that localities will be sort of facing in the near future. So great questions.
Thank you.
Great. Do you all have time for like maybe 2 more questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
Cool. I'm having fun. Thank you. So another question that came in from actually a friend of mine. In light of cannabis being legal and all this, can employers in New York drug test employees for cannabis and THC?
No, it's like it's a legal consumable product, and it's employers are prohibited from discriminating against employees, based on consumption of cannabis outside of the workplace, outside of work hours, when they're not using like their employer's equipment and machinery. But and tests are not a valid way of determining, whether so, somebody is if they come to work, there maybe Wei can get into the details of this, but it's like if they manifest specific articulable symptoms at work, this is like that is then grounds for raising an issue. But you can't test someone, and as we know, it's in your bloodstream for a long time. So it's just not a valid test. So
yeah, the State Department of Labor did come out issuing guidance for the overwhelming majority of employers to prohibit cannabis testing. I think on the federal level it's still legal, so there may be very narrow exceptions for certain types of occupation where it's kind of
I was gonna ask about that.
It may be. I had actually heard for like bus drivers, like there's something
doctors and nurses,
federal, but there are also exceptions in the state regulations for jobs that if it's federal employment, or even if it's like an employer risks losing a federal contract. That's another kind of exceptional circumstance, again just owing to its illegality at the federal level.
But not like doctors and nurses and people who are okay, good to know.
Oh, it's so interesting. Thank you. I'll just throw the next question that came your way. Are there going to be special events licenses? Do you know? Kind of like how when a music festival is being organized, there's special alcohol event licenses and stuff like that. So I have a feeling that's where that question is kind of coming from.
Yeah, it's not one of the license types that's authorized under the MRTA. I don't think we're prohibited from creating other license types, but it's not something that we're working on the ones that we have to create right now. I know it exists in some other states, but yeah, so all I can say is there's nothing in place in the immediate future, but it could be considered.
I know there's a permitting system where, I know there'd be the transportation permits, testing permits, I think warehousing permits, I think provisional permits prior to the licensing. So I don't think there'll be a distinct license for one-off events, but there could be a one-off permit. I think, I think that's in contemplation. So.
Cool, thank you. That's actually really interesting because I saw that whole idea in play actually when I was in Las Vegas a while ago. There is a cannabis organization that is working on getting a license for next time this festival that happens every year occurs. So cool. Stana, did you want to grab one of the next questions before we wrap up?
Yes, I would. So someone asked if the village board is planning on enacting any additional regulations beyond what comes out in the state regulations once they're released. And the answer to that is not to my knowledge. No, we're not.
So all we can do is stuff that has to do with zoning, kind of like both
Right.
Jen and Wei were talking about a bit before, and that kind of stuff. It's just like with anything else, like time, manner, place, and then other just ag versus residential versus business district type zoning stuff. That's it. Personally, if
related-
anything comes
Go
up,
ahead.
in my time here, I'm not really looking to regulate this further. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
And related to that, someone asked if any properties in the village are sufficiently far enough away from a school to legally open a dispensary or other public-facing cannabis business. That's a great question. I don't know. Do you know, Alex?
I mean, it's 500 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, Main Street is
Yeah.
500 feet.
Is that what it is?
More
It's
than
500
500 feet from any
So then,
school.
yeah, there's plenty. Then there's plenty. So it's. I guess
Yeah.
there's no houses of worship isn't a part of that, or
That's
200
200,
feet. Yeah.
right?
All right,
Is it
so
Yeah,
then-
200. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
So
a
then we got
really,
plenty.
there's a really great state website called LAMP. I don't know. I think it's under this SLA, but it's actually like a state-run website where you could put in an address and it'll tell you whether or not there's any houses of worship or schools that you should be aware of. So I think
That's
if
awesome.
you Google SLA LAMP, it will bring you to that sort of interactive map where you could find properties far away, away from houses of worship and schools. So.
Thank you. I will look that link up and also share that widely after this event. Kate, did you want to throw a question our way before we wrap up?
Yeah, thank you. It's just sort of a follow-up question to that. Thank you all so much for doing this. Really appreciate your time. Sorry, thank you. With regards to, I live in the village. I am planning on applying for a dispensary license. And my question related to the school and house of worship, the answer is yes, because I've done a lot of research on this and looking for locations. But some question that, and maybe this hasn't yet been discussed, but I'm wondering if the board has considered how they're going to measure that 500 and 200 feet, if it's door to door, if it's from property line to property line, is it, yeah. Because I think that a lot of, especially in the Village of New Paltz, there's a lot of churches that, depending on how you measure, and synagogues and other houses of worship that make it a little bit more complicated, even on Main Street. But it all depends on how the board is going to define that unit of measure. And I don't know, maybe you haven't.
Oh, just to let you know,
Already done. Oh, yes, go ahead, Wei. I know.
Oh, no, sorry, go ahead. No.
No, it's just this is already in place for alcohol. So, but Wei, I don't know if you know the specific answer to that question. It will be the same rules will apply to a bar, but I actually don't know the specifics of how.
There's PDFs. There's like the sort of state liquor authority has explanations. There's like it's on the main door. They can measure from the main door. But there's actually like documents explaining the 500 and 200 foot rule on the state.
Definitely, and it's like on this website. On the same side of the
on the
street,
same side of the street. Yeah, exactly.
I've looked into all of those
there's
things.
Side entrances. Yeah, there's side entrances. You measure from the main one.
It will be the same.
It will be the same. So
I imagine.
Not necessarily, but we don't know for sure yet.
Well, I mean, there are no regs in place yet,
right.
but it wouldn't make sense to have two different, two different ways of measuring the same thing.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Thank you all so much.
Yeah,
The
thanks.
state website
Thanks,
has
Kate.
info. Yeah.
Bill, did you have another question? Go for it, and then
Yeah,
we'll
just
wrap up.
A quick one. Are there any previous convictions that would exclude someone from getting a license of in any category?
You want me to
Wei, our
answer it?
attorney answer that.
Oh yeah, no, it's they're really looking for good actors here. So I think under the statutes, prior marijuana convictions would not necessarily prohibit it, but if you were convicted of fraud, acts involving business dishonesty, it would definitely weigh negatively in your application. And it's really, I think, the criteria we're looking for is the ability to make sure it doesn't get diverted to the illegal legacy black market. So, prior non-marijuana convictions would play a big role in your application for a license.
But felony, say a felony conviction, marijuana related or cannabis related, wouldn't exclude you from
I
possibly
don't think
being
it does
licensed?
exclude you. It has to be, there's specific language in the law on this subject.
Yeah, there are factors, and there's no, bright line test, so I think they look at the applicant, as character, and, conviction history is definitely, a big part of it. But I think marijuana convictions are the exception to general convictions are bad things. So
Right.
hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to ask my question, which is a weird one, and then we'll wrap up. I don't know if there's actually an answer to it, but it comes up a lot in my work with fellow tenants in our majority renter community and all over Ulster County. But in terms of home growing and 6 plants per household and whatnot, how might this affect buildings full of lots of tenants who all share like one common little place where we can have our, where we keep our plants currently, our tomato plants and stuff, and in the future would be interested in putting our cannabis plants. But we're not all households, it's 3 different, apartments, for example, in my building. We all share the same little teeny tiny deck. Would we all have to be counted as a household and be limited to 6 plants for the whole building? Yeah.
Yeah, I think a household, and again, this is a legal issue that you might have, but I would assume it's like by the lease, right? So if you are a bunch of college housemates, like with one lease, you're going to be limited to 1 household, which is 2, you can have the maximum for 2 adults number of plants. But, if it's separate apartments, it's each or separate leases, each apartment is a different household. So, and it's a maximum of 2 adult, allotments per household.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Oh, thank you. There is an answer to my question. Wow. Awesome. Well, that is about it. You both covered so much ground. Thank you so much. Everyone who tuned in and everyone who wants to tune in the future, will be making sure the recording's available on the Village website, and I'll get together a little doc with some of the materials that were mentioned in some of both Jen and Way's responses and in their presentations, and share that widely too. You all can get in touch with us at the Village Board just by emailing vb@villageofnewpaltz.org, and we can always help connect you with other resources like folks from the county and like Jen and like Way, and help you out if you have more questions. So if Jen, Way want to say anything to close, feel free. I just thank you so much.
I just want to thank you, Alex, and Sana too, for just for organizing this, and Way, and it really it was a real pleasure to participate.
Thank you for bringing the information to people. And thank you for having me. So
Thank you.
I learned so much, and I'm so grateful to everybody who participated. Thank you all so much.
I'm going to show off my cannabis themed skirt that I wore.
Nice.
And get the live stream ending. Where is it?